We really need to remember that she was this incredible life force, and she had all this energy, positive energy. So every time it came around to the criminal trial, I thought, please God, let somebody find a way back to letting people know how wonderful she was.
That special light of Shelley Tyre, dearly missed by so many who knew her. Was her husband, David Swain, responsible for taking it from the world? Or was he an innocent man whose private ways had made a tragic accident only look like murder? A jury in a Tortolan courtroom would soon decide, but not before David Swain himself took the stand to answer questions from his island attorney.
Mr. Swain, when you went on the dive with Shelley Tyre on that 12th of March of 1999, did you kill Shelley Tyre?
I did not, could not, would not dream of taking the rock of my life out of the world. That's just, no, I did not.
Did you in any way, during the course of that dive, deprive Shelley Tyre of air?
The last thing in the world is I would deprive Shelley of anything. So I certainly didn't deprive her of air.
Then it was the prosecution's turn.
You held her down
I did not.
and made her become unconscious.
I did not.
And this was within 8 minutes of the dive.
It was not. I did not. You are making false accusations.
You got a little edgy on the stand.
I'm sure I did.
A little abrasive, little in the face.
I'm fighting for my life.
Missing from his testimony was the grief of a husband who had lost his wife to a diving accident.
Did you get penalized for not showing them a turbulent soul that they expected?
I'm positive I have been penalized for not being what people expect.
David Swain says he's always had trouble expressing emotion in a way people expect. It's a problem he attributes to a very dark and secretive past.
I've had decades of horrific things happening to me. And the only way that I've survived all of these horrific things that have happened is to just buckle down and keep marching.
You had a really tough childhood, safe to say?
Safe to say.
When David was in his early teens, his father was convicted of sexually abusing a family member. Then his father changed his sexual identity. Donald Swain began living as a woman and changed his name to Diane.
What can your teenage brain make of that? My dad is now going to be known as Diane.
Since we didn't have a relationship, I didn't think a whole lot of it. At the time, it was something I suppressed.
But nothing was more traumatic than the actions of David's younger brother, Ricky.
At the time, he was having his own emotional, mental problems.
My first reaction was, boy, does he make a nice appearance. A clean cut, nice-looking young man.
But former Minnesota prosecutor Jim Erickson says nothing could be further from the truth. In 1976, 18-year-old Ricky Swain snapped and murdered his mother Betty by bludgeoning her to death in the basement of their home.
The skull was crashed in 2 places. There was lots of rage in this death.
Horrible, horrible event.
Yes, it is.
Back in Tortola, David Swain's psychologist was prepared to explain in court how these horrible events could account for David's emotionless, some say suspicious behavior soon after his wife's death.
As strategy, I could see where that could play both ways. It might blow back and say, well, what is this instability going on in this family? Is there a demon seed? People with a pop psychology understanding might say, what's going on with this?
So should a person be committed and convicted of murder because of pop psychology?
Was it a risk?
I'm sorry, but I didn't have a choice to live this truth. The truth is what it is. I'm just wanting to tell the truth.
But the defense's strategy was never tested. The judge denied the psychologist the opportunity to testify, in part because he was a psychologist, not an MD. So now it was left to the jurors to decide David Swain's fate.
I'm coming to you live here in Roatan from the Supreme Court with the news that the jury is currently deliberating.
Then, after just 5 hours, came word. There was a verdict.
As they're walking in, I pretty much knew.
You're looking at the faces, the body language?
I'm looking at the body language and the faces, and pretty much knew.
How say you? Is the accused David Swain guilty or not guilty of murder?
Would the jury find the accused guilty?
guilty of first-degree murder. The sentence, 25 years.
How do you face that kind of time?
One day at a time.
Give me a quick thumbnail of what your cell was like.
6 by 10, couple of bunks, a commode, a sink, no screen on the bars, so the window, anything and everything would come in.
Bugs.
Oh, bugs were the easy part. It's the rats and the animals and all the other things. Those were the hard parts.
David Swain settled back into the misery of prison life. His only comfort was the prospect of an appeal.
Did you think he had a ghost of a chance on appeal?
I did. This wasn't a good trial. This wasn't a fair trial.
Almost 2 years after his guilty verdict, David Swain returned to court. A 3-judge appellate panel listened to more than 3 hours of oral arguments and then did something no one anticipated.
The head judge ends it all by looking right at me and saying, "Mr. Swain, you're free to go." You know, obviously my mouth drops open and I'm in shock again. And so I just sit there for, I don't know, 15, 20 seconds, and the bailiff guy, he nudges me and he quietly says, "Mr. Swain, you got to get up and walk out now."
Why did he walk? The panel believed in part that the trial judge had been biased toward the prosecution in her instructions to the jury. What's more, they ruled Swain shouldn't be retried because too much time had passed since Shelley's death for Swain to get a fair trial. So just like that, David Swain was a free man.
That was one of the most surreal moments in my life.
Did you think about Shelley as you left the island?
I think about Shelley almost every day. But yes, I was thinking about her that day.
David Swain is now living back on the Rhode Island coast, not far from the home he once shared with Shelley.
You have to pinch yourself sometimes that you're back in New England?
It certainly is good looking over at Jamestown and looking at this body of water where I have spent years exploring and teaching and enjoying.
But it's also home to many people who remain convinced David Swain got away with murder.
Is there still a cloud over you? Are people always going to say with David Swain, he got away with killing his wife? That he was cut loose on a technicality, that the judge erred?
That's their opinion. I can't tell you what to think. I don't want to tell you what to think. If you want to hear the facts, I'll be happy to share the facts. But I'm not going to spend a lot of energy trying to change something that you've made up your mind on.
Shelley's gravestone is also close by for those who loved and admired her to visit and to find the lessons hidden beneath the surface of this senseless tragedy.
If I was to ask Shelley, what do I do about this? Given this situation, she would say, focus on the here and now. Find the good in everybody that you see around you. See life's blessings. If you need help, I'll point them out for you. That's what she would do.